Some pennies carry more than copper and zinc. They hold stories of change, of mistakes, and of quiet revolutions at the U.S. Mint. 1961 showed the precision of a proud mint. 1982 split two metals in 1 year, and 1983 exposed an error that stunned collectors worldwide. Decades apart, yet tied by change and imperfection, these pennies tell a story worth remembering. Let's dive into it together.
Twice about the pennies rattling around in your junk drawer, but a few of them could be worth thousands. Yes, thousands, if you know what to look for. Today, we're zeroing in on three specific 1-cent coins from the 1980s and early 60s that, under the right conditions, have sold for eye-watering sums at auction. Whether you're a longtime collector or just someone who's held onto a jar of old change since the Reagan administration, this is one you'll want to pay attention to. First up, the 1983 Lincoln cent, a coin that proves errors can sometimes be worth far more than perfection. Let's rewind to the early 1980s. In 1982, the U.S. Mint made a major shift in the way pennies were produced. For decades, they had been made primarily of copper, but copper prices were climbing, and the Mint decided to switch to a cheaper composition, zinc with a thin copper coating. This change happened mid-year in 1982, which created a whole new set of varieties. Fast forward to 1983, and the transition was supposed to be complete. Every 1983 penny should have been made from the new copper-plated zinc planchets. But then, something unexpected happened. A small number of 1983 Lincoln cents were struck on the old solid copper planchets from the pre-1982 era. This wasn't just a minor hiccup, it was a full-blown error that wasn't discovered until years later. These rare 1983 copper cents weren't meant to exist, and their rarity comes from the fact that they slipped through the cracks at the Mint during a time of major transition. So, how can you tell if you've got one? The difference between a zinc penny and a copper one isn't always visible to the naked eye, but there's a trick collectors use: the weight. A zinc penny weighs about 2.5 grams, while a copper one weighs closer to 3.1 grams. It might not sound like much, but on a precision scale, that discrepancy is unmistakable. If you've got a 1983 penny that weighs in at 3.1 grams, your heart should skip a beat. You're potentially holding one of the most valuable error coins of the decade. Now, let's talk dollars. A verified 1983 copper penny in uncirculated condition has fetched over $15,000 at auction. One particularly high-profile example, graded MS65 by PCGS, sold for more than $23,000. And even circulated versions, those with some wear and tear, can still command several $1,000s if they're authenticated. The key here is verification. You're not going to pull one of these out of a cup holder and get rich overnight. You need it weighed, graded, and preferably slabbed by a reputable company like PCGS or NGC. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The 1983 copper cent is often confused with another error from the same year, the double die reverse. This is a different beast altogether, but it's worth mentioning because it adds to the coin's mystique. The double die features noticeable doubling in the lettering and Lincoln Memorial columns. If, by some astronomical luck, you find a 1983 penny with both errors, a copper composition, and a double die reverse, you're looking at a unicorn in the coin world. We're talking museum-worthy territory. Now, before you go scrambling through your couch cushions, let's talk about condition. Like most coins, the value of a 1983 copper cent is dramatically affected by its grade. A mint state example, meaning no signs of wear and a sharp, clean strike, will always command a premium. Circulated coins, especially those with scratches, discoloration, or worn details, are still valuable in this case, but you're not hitting that five-figure jackpot unless the coin is in top condition and authenticated. And here's a final nugget of coin lore. The discovery of the 1983 copper cent came not from a mint, but from private collectors who noticed discrepancies in weight. It was grassroots numismatic detective work that led to this error being recognized and cataloged, and that's part of what makes this coin so compelling. It wasn't declared a rarity by the government, it was uncovered by sharp-eyed collectors who knew what they were looking for. That spirit of discovery is what keeps people coming back to the hobby year after year. One overlooked detail, one misread label, one old jar of coins in a family garage, it could all lead to a major find. And when it comes to 1983 pennies, it's not just about having a lucky coin. It's about knowing what that coin shouldn't be made of. Next up, we're going back a little further in time to a penny from 1961 that might seem ordinary until you take a closer look. In 1961, the U.S. Mint was still using a fairly standard production process for the Lincoln cent, which had been in circulation since 1909. By this time, the design was familiar: Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, both iconic images that have become staples of American numismatics. But beneath the surface, something was brewing in the coin world that would make certain 1960 one-pennies more valuable than they might appear at first glance. Let's set the stage. The 1960s were a period of economic prosperity and technological advancements, but they were also a time of coinage experimentation. In 1961, the Mint was still adjusting to the results of the 1959 redesign, which had replaced the wheat ears reverse with the Lincoln Memorial. While the vast majority of the 1961 pennies were struck with a regular, well-known design, certain unique traits in the production process led to some interesting varieties and errors that coin collectors today covet, particularly when it comes to the 1961 penny. For collectors, one of the most fascinating aspects of a 1961 penny is the presence of a rare, small-date variety. The 1961 small date is easily confused with the more common 1961 large date. The difference lies in the size and positioning of the numbers in the date on the coin, with the small date showing a thinner, more compact 1 and 9 compared to the larger, more spaced-out numerals of the large date. While the difference seems subtle at first, it can be incredibly important for determining the rarity and value of a coin. The small date variety was struck in much lower numbers, which makes it highly sought after by collectors. In fact, it's believed that the small date was produced for only a limited time before the Mint switched back to the more typical large date. The fact that the small date variety wasn't deliberately planned or widely known makes it all the more intriguing. It wasn't an error in the traditional sense, but it was certainly a variation that collectors only began to realize was special years after the coins had been released into circulation. So, what makes this coin valuable today? First off, it's that scarcity factor. As with most rare coins, the less there are of them, the higher the demand among collectors. 1961 small date pennies can fetch hefty prices, especially if they're in good condition. A well-preserved 1961 small date penny, graded at a high level such as MS-65, can bring in several $1,000s at auction. Some collectors have paid over $10,000 for a pristine example of this coin. Meanwhile, a lower grade version, say one that has circulated a bit more with noticeable wear, will still have a market value, though typically in the low hundreds or less. Interestingly, the small date variety of 1961 is not the only factor influencing the value of a 1961 penny. Another feature worth considering is the coin's overall condition. As with many older coins, a well-maintained example will always be worth more. The higher the grade, the higher the value, as these coins are considered rarer in mint state, especially those without dings, scratches, or discoloration. When you look at a 1961 penny in MS-65 or better condition, you're looking at a coin that's had minimal contact with wear and tear, making it more appealing to collectors. In addition to the small date variety, another set of 1961 pennies that gets attention are those with errors in the striking process. This can range from misaligned dies to double-struck coins or even off-center strikes. These errors are highly coveted in the coin community because they are often unique to individual coins, making them stand out even more in a collection. A double-struck 1961 penny, for example, could bring the value of an ordinary coin up into the range of hundreds of dollars or more, depending on the severity of the error and its rarity. But what about those unique stories that make these coins come alive in the world of numismatics? One interesting fact about the 1961 penny is how it sparked a collection frenzy in the mid-20th century. After reports of the small date variety started circulating, collectors began obsessively hunting for these elusive coins. You could find them on the secondary market in rolls of pennies that had been stored in people's homes for decades, or even in banks. These coins were not only valuable, but had a story, almost like treasure hunts from an era when coin collectors didn't have the resources we do today to help identify rare varieties so easily. But let's not forget, not every 1961 penny is going to break the bank. Like all coins, condition matters. A circulated 1961 small date penny might still be valuable, but it's not going to command the same attention as one that's uncirculated. And if you're not familiar with the process of coin grading, now's the time to learn. A coin that has seen years of wear and tear may be worth only a fraction of what a coin in near perfect condition would fetch. The real magic of a 1961 small date penny, though, lies in its understated rarity. It's not as flashy or immediately obvious as other high value error coins, but that subtlety is part of what makes it so appealing. It's a coin that might sit quietly in your collection, just waiting for someone to notice it for what it truly is, one of the hidden gems of the modern coin world. Now, as we leave behind 1961 penny and its history, it's time to explore another interesting piece of numismatic history from the same era. The 1982 penny, another product of the transition from copper to zinc, that also carries with it its own unique characteristics and errors. Let's dive into the next part of our story. The 1982 penny is one of the most fascinating coins in modern U.S. numismatics, largely due to the monumental shift that occurred in the coin's production during that year. If the 1983 penny was a product of change, then the 1982 penny is the beginning of that change. The year 1982 marked the first full year that the U.S. Mint began transitioning its pennies from a copper-based composition to a zinc core with a copper coating, a decision driven largely by rising copper prices. But as you might expect in any significant change, this shift didn't happen smoothly. And as a result, the 1982 penny offers not just one, but multiple opportunities for collectors to find rare and valuable coins. To understand why the 1982 penny is so valuable, let's dive into the historical context of its production. The switch from copper to a copper-plated zinc composition was no small feat. It began in 1982, but the transition didn't happen all at once. The mint continued striking both copper and zinc pennies during the year, leading to the creation of two distinct versions of the 1982 penny. The copper version, 97.5% copper and 2.5% zinc, and the new zinc version, 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper. So, right off the bat, you can see that a 1982 penny might be worth a little more attention than a regular run-of-the-mill coin. It's possible that your 1982 penny could be made of either copper or zinc, and the difference can have a significant impact on its value. However, this isn't just about the composition, it's about the error coins that arose from the process. As the mint shifted between the two materials, some 1982 pennies were struck on the wrong planchet. In particular, there are reports of pennies being struck on zinc planchets, but with the original copper composition intended for the new zinc pennies. This error, while rare, is highly prized in the numismatic world due to its incredibly limited production. Imagine holding a coin that was caught in the transition, one of the last pieces of copper-based change before the mint completely switched to zinc. This is the kind of thing collectors dream about. The real beauty of a 1982 penny, however, lies in its variety of features. In addition to the dual composition, there's also a variety of date styles to consider. The 1982 penny was struck in two different date styles, one with a large date and one with a small date. Much like the 1961 penny discussed earlier, this small date variety is sought after by collectors due to its lower mintage and higher rarity. While the difference in the two dates might seem subtle at first glance, one is just slightly smaller than the other, the difference in value is far more significant. A 1982 small date copper penny is a prime target for collectors, especially those who want to get their hands on one of the rarest coins of the 20th century. Now, let's move from the technical details of the 1982 penny's composition and era varieties to its market value. Much like the 1983 copper penny, the value of the 1982 coin depends heavily on its condition, its composition, and its specific variety. A 1982 small date copper penny, considered one of the holy grails for numismatists, can fetch prices that go well into the thousands. In fact, a mint state 1982 small date copper penny, particularly one that is graded MS65 or higher, has been known to sell for upwards of $20,000 at auction. This makes it one of the most expensive modern pennies on the market today. But it's not just the rare copper small date varieties that command high prices. Even a zinc version of the 1982 penny can fetch a decent amount if it's in good condition. A high-grade zinc 1982 penny in MS65 or better could still sell for several $100s, depending on its specific variety and condition. And for collectors, the hunt for these varieties can be as exciting as the reward itself. Since the 1982 penny is still relatively common in circulation today, collectors can sometimes find them in rolls of coins or even in change at the grocery store. Of course, the likelihood of finding a high-grade 1982 small date copper penny in your spare change is slim, but that's part of the thrill, knowing that the next coin you stumble upon could potentially be worth thousands of dollars. But what about those fascinating error coins? As mentioned earlier, the production errors that resulted from the mint's transitional process give the 1982 penny an added layer of intrigue. One of the most famous 1982 penny errors is the off-center strike, where the design doesn't line up properly with the coin's edges, creating a fascinating misalignment that collectors love. Off-center 1982 pennies, whether struck on copper or zinc planchets, are highly desirable and can command prices ranging from several hundred to a few $1,000s, depending on the severity of the error and the coin's condition. Another interesting aspect of the 1982 penny is the fact that the zinc pennies, due to their different composition, tend to tarnish or corrode over time in a way that copper pennies do not. This has given rise to a unique look for certain 1982 zinc pennies that adds to their appeal. While tarnish or corrosion might not be ideal for a collector's coin, it does give these pennies a distinctive look, something that collectors might find particularly interesting if they're looking to add an unusual coin to their collection. Interestingly, some collectors seek out 1982 pennies with unusual toning or discoloration, hoping to find an example that has developed unique, vibrant hues. This is where the condition of the coin, its exposure to the elements, and the way it's been stored all play a role in its value. While the tarnishing of zinc pennies is often seen as a sign of deterioration, some collectors see it as a fascinating quirk of a coin that represents a transitional period in U.S. coinage history. And just as with the 1983 copper penny and the 1961 small date penny, the key to maximizing the value of a 1982 penny is its grade and certification. Coins that are in pristine, uncirculated condition, free from blemishes and imperfections, will always be more valuable than coins that have seen a fair amount of wear. That's why collectors often turn to professional grading services like PCGS or NGC to ensure their coins are accurately rated. This is particularly important for error coins, where the authenticity of the error plays a significant role in its value. The 1982 penny's role in numismatic history is undeniable. It's not just a transitional coin, it's a snapshot of a moment when change was happening, both in terms of a nation's economy and its coinage. Whether you're after a small date variety, a mint state example, or an error coin from this year, the 1982 penny offers a wealth of opportunity for collectors willing to put in the time and effort to track down one of these elusive coins. Now, as we move past the 1982 penny and its numerous varieties, let's take a moment to reflect on the rich history of U.S. coinage and the rarity of some of the coins that circulate in our pockets today. Whether you're hunting for an error, a low mintage variety, or simply learning about the fascinating world of numismatics, the journey of discovery is just as valuable as the coins themselves. And remember, there's always more treasure to uncover in the world of rare and valuable coins.
This coin, well, it's something special right out of the gate. Picture this: just last month, at a heritage auction on June 18, 2025, an MS-67 1983 Washington quarter with a textbook perfect D mint mark rang the bell at $3,450. And get this, that sale sent a shockwave through collector circles, because most folks think of 1,983 quarters as pocket change. But when die errors and pristine condition collide, values skyrocket. Now, if you've got a handful of these in your change jar, listen up. Here's exactly what to look for. First, inspect the rim. An off-center strike of just 5% can transform a 25-cent piece into a four-figure treasure. And second, check the obverse lettering, especially the "In God." On genuine double die examples, that God will appear echoed, like a faint shadow. What's fascinating is how often even seasoned collectors miss that doubling. At first glance, a 1983 quarter, well, it looks like any clad Washington. But look closer, and when collectors realized what they had, bids exploded. Take that MS-67 sale. At first glance, nothing special. But look closer, and the planchet had a tiny clip at 8 o'clock, adding a distinct rarity factor. Off-center, clipped planchet, doubled die, that trifecta can fetch five-figure prices if truly exceptional. Let's break down why this coin climbed so far. In 1983, mintage numbers crack 750 million. Normally, that means plentiful. But error coins exist in the shadows. A misaligned die here, a clipped blank there. Production presses don't catch every flaw. And that's gold for collectors hunting oddities. Here's exactly what to look for on the reverse, spot where the eagle's wing meets the field. If you see any tooling, lines or lamination flakes, you could have a broad strike or die crack variety. That's another jackpot scenario. Condition matters big time. In well-worn grades, you might see these trading for face value, or maybe 50 cents if you're lucky. In extremely fine, values climb to $2 or $3. But once you hit uncirculated MS-60, expect $5 to $10 in normal examples. And in the MS-65 range, typical coins go for $20 to $30. But those error pieces or exceptional full strike examples, well, they can leap into the hundreds, even thousands. Here's a red flag warning. If you see a 1983 quarter advertised as full steps, without clear photos of Washington's eagle reverse steps, walk away. Counterfeit or overly polished pieces often hide the missing step definition. Authentication tip: this detail alone separates real near MS-67 examples from fakes. Most people miss this detail, but full, crisp step definition under magnification is non-negotiable. Now, collector discovery stories. They really drive home the excitement. Picture a retiree cleaning out his kid's old coin album. He flips past an unassuming 1983 D quarter, glances at the edges, and smirks. Decades ago, he'd sold a doubled die coin for peanuts at a local show. But this time, he thought, let me just check one last time. Turns out, under a loop, that quarter was off-center by 12%, clipped by 3%, and graded $58 Australian by PCGS. He listed it online, got an offer for $1,200 within hours. That kind of story? It fuels midnight searches through change bowls everywhere. And here's what you really need to know about how these show up in collections. Most end up in pocket spills, on coin sorting trays at banks, or tucked inside dusty government sets. If you're a folder collector, flip through each slab. Don't rush. Practical check your collection advice. Use a bright LED loupe and natural daylight if possible. Spin the coin slowly to catch subtle clipping or die cracks that catch the light at certain angles. Current market trend, well, it's been rising steadily over the last 2 years. Error coins from the early 80s have captured imaginations, partly because modern clad errors were once overlooked. Auction volume has surged about 25% year over year, especially for off-center strikes and doubled dies. So realistic expectations? If you find a mid-grade normal specimen, don't expect more than a few dollars. But if that quarter shows even a whisper of misalignment, or die doubling, get it graded. Let's talk grades with a concrete example. Last month, an MS63 normal 1983P sold for $14. A week before that, an MS63D with faint die doubling fetched $150. Then, that MS67D error piece sold for $3,450. Market surprise. When that $150 coin hit the block, bids shot past $200 in 30 seconds. Collectors realized they'd slept on early 80s errors, and panic buying set in. But here's the thing, authentication drama can trip you up. I've seen counterfeit doubling applied by artists trying to simulate a doubled die. Most fakes show raised paste on metal lines over original text. Real doubling is sunk into the die. You'll see indented shadows under certain light angles. If something looks too perfect, be wary. One little known detail. Some 1983 quarters exhibit a faint die clash between obverse and reverse. That shows up as ghost images of the eagle's wing feathers on Washington's chin. It's subtle, but when you spot it, you know you've hit a rare clash variety. And clash coins command a neat premium, often double typical circulation values, even in lower grades. What about where to sell or buy? Major auction houses like Heritage or Stack's Bowers are safe bets. But for a quick flip, certified dealers on online platforms can move error coins fast. Just verify their feedback and return policy. And if you're grading, go with NGC or PCGS for best resale credibility. Let's bring it full circle with one more suspense beat. Imagine pulling out a handful of quarters at your local cafe. You spot a faint off-center strike, your heart races. You run home, flash that under your loupe, and you realize you've got something few people notice. And when you list it, the auction room goes silent until the hammer drops. So check your jars. Spin coins under daylight. And ask yourself, could that unassuming 1983 Washington quarter be your next big find? That little piece of clad metal could rewrite your collecting story.